In
The
the
legend
vast
says the humans
expanse of the
survived the
galaxy,
war-torn
where
worlds.
alien
now
empires
it
wage
returns. Is the
wars
legend
with
real?
weapons
We
that
must
can
know.
crack planets and
She is
fleets
a
that
myth,
blot
a
out
non-threat.
suns,
Then
there
why deny
exists
me?
a legend
Your
whispered in
persistence
the
is futile.
darkest
The matter is
corners of
closed.
space stations
You think this brand
and the
scares
deepest
me? I wear it
bunkers
with
of
pride.
war-torn
The bounty says
worlds.
otherwise.
It
Highest
speaks
in
of
the
a
sector.
human who moves like shadow,
The
strikes
highest
like
bounty in
lightning,
Dominion
and
history.
leaves
10
behind
million
only
credits. Who could
silence
claim
in
it?
the bodies
Every
of
hunter
those
will
foolish
try.
enough to hunt her kind. The Galactic
the hope she
Council
brings.
calls her a myth. The
I won't
Zephyrian
let you
Empire
down.
brands her a terrorist. The Korthak Dominion has placed the highest bounty in recorded history on her head. But to the scattered human colonies fighting for survival against impossible odds, she is something far more dangerous than any weapon ever forged. She is hope, and she has been hiding in
Sector
plain
7.
sight
How bad are
all
the losses?
along.
Over
What happens when the
1,200. The
quiet
Western arrays are
girl
critical.
sitting in the
We need
corner of
options.
every briefing room, the one everyone overlooks and dismisses, finally decides to stop pretending
Right.
to be harmless?
And,
What happens when humanity's greatest predator stops playing prey? The galaxy is about to find
resistance
out
destroyed
why
17
humans
supply
were
convoys
never
in the
meant to be
Kepler 442
caged.
garrison.
The
How do we
orbital
stop them?
station New Geneva hung
3
like
months
a
of
dying
losses.
star
The trend is
against the
clear.
black void.
We must
its
address
hull
this.
scarred
The
by
council needs to
plasma
act.
burns and micro-meteor impacts. Inside the cramped briefing room of Sector 7, 23 beings from across
Results
the galaxy
now.
sat around
General,
a
the
holographic
asteroid fields are
display
interfering.
showing the latest
Unacceptable.
casualty
Find a way.
reports
I'll
from
try.
the human colonies.
The fleet's
The air
resources are being
recyclers
wasted here.
wheezed with
I
effort,
agree. This
struggling to
backwater sector
process
drains
the
our
mix of
supplies.
So what's the
atmospheric
plan?
requirements
The invasion
for the
plan for
various
47
species
worlds is
present.
confirmed. Troops
Commander
and devices
Vextar
will
of the
deploy in 6
Zephyrian
months.
Military
Can
Council
humans
stood
stop
at the
it?
head of the table, his forearms gesticulating as he spoke in the clicking, chittering language of his insectoid race.
The plan is
the
simple.
universal
We
translator
divide into
rendered
zones of
his
responsibility.
words into
Our
standard
primitive tech will
galactic.
have to be enough.
The human resistance has become more than an annoyance. In the past 3 months, we have lost 17 supply convoys, 4 orbital platforms,
agrees.
and an
Trade routes
entire
secured.
garrison on
This
Kepler.
broad support significantly.
442b.
The economic impact
the
will
other
be profound.
representatives murmured among themselves. General Cronus of the Korthak Dominion, a massive reptilian
timeline
whose
is
scales
72 hours.
gleamed under the harsh
When do
lighting,
we stop?
leaned
Now.
forward. My scouts report similar
We have
losses.
72 hours for preliminary
the
actions.
humans
No time
strike
to prepare for
without
full-
warning,
After that,
hit
it's all
hard,
systems
and
go.
vanish before we
What about
can
the
respond.
civilians on
they
the outer
fight
rim?
like he paused,
She mentioned them
searching for the right
specifically.
word.
Do we ignore
like
the Accords?
animals, finished
I won't
Ambassador
surrender.
Lysandra
This event
of
will
the
justify
Ethereal
everything.
Collective,
The
her
mammals, the
translucent
steppings-
form shimmering with displeasure. Savage, primitive animals. In the back corner of the room, largely hidden behind a stack of data tablets and a portable atmospheric processor that hummed quietly, sat a small figure
temporal
that
fields are
none of the mighty
destabilizing.
galactic
Do you
powers
see
bothered to
distortions?
acknowledge.
Will anyone
Maya Chen
intervene?
was technically the human representative to this council,
we react
though
to this
her
anomaly?
presence was tolerated rather than welcomed. At 24
The production
standard
levels
years
are unstable.
old, she barely reached the shoulder of the smallest alien in the room. Her dark hair
Is
was
this your
pulled
best
back in a
answer?
simple
Your
ponytail,
challenge
and
is
she wore the
dismissed. This is
plain gray
sufficient.
I
jumpsuit
see,
issued
then I
to
accept.
all civilian personnel
You
on the
think your
station.
confidence is
She said
justified?
nothing as the discussion
Or is it
continued
just
around her,
compulsion?
occasionally making notes on her
I know the
tablet
secret
with
to
steady,
success.
precise
Overwhelming
movements.
our power.
To the aliens
Physics is
present, she was
superior, firepower
exactly what
wins.
they expected from a
Of
human.
course, thanks.
Small, weak, and utterly irrelevant. The fact that Earth's government had
2-hour
bothered to
logistics
send any
protocols for
representative at
territory
all
division.
was
We need
seen
to
as
fill
a
out the
quaint
planning
gesture of
details. All
defiance from a
documented?
dying species. The problem, Vextar continued, is that we cannot predict their movements. They appear to have no
Hello,
central
Gramos, the
command
quantum matrix
structure,
is stable.
no
Hi, Bangla,
unified
energy
strategy.
readings are optimal.
Take
What
the
now?
rest
We
of
must
the
test the
step to
anti-gravity
take off
chamber.
the body's pathway, which is done to a daily bit to be a patient and take a vacation to impede. Perhaps that is
Disagreement
their
on
strength,
intel.
offered
Rerouting
diplomat
to random
Kultafar
coordinates
of the
now.
Nexus Confederation.
Message encrypted and
Her
sent.
aquatic breathing apparatus
Transmitting
bubbling
maintenance data to
softly as she
recipients now.
spoke.
Signed,
Chaos
S.
is difficult
This
to
is our
counter
promise
with
to the
order.
resistance.
The movement was so slight that no
Transmission
one
complete.
noticed, but her
Moving
dark
out.
eyes flickered up from her notes to study the tactical display floating above the table. The red markers indicating recent attacks formed a pattern that the aliens, for all their advanced technology and military experience, had failed to recognize. General Cronus slammed a clawed fist onto the table, causing several smaller representatives to flinch. Enough philosophy. What matters is results. Every day, these vermin continue to resist. More of our resources are tied up in this backwater sector. The Dominion has better uses for our
Cross-referencing patrols
fleets
and
than
hideouts.
chasing human
Calculating
guerrillas
response
through
times for supply
asteroid
convoys.
fields.
Countermeasures
Vextar
ready?
agreed, which
The
brings
temporal
us to the
distortions are
purpose of this
accelerating. We
meeting.
must
The High
compose
Command
countermeasures
has
immediately.
authorized
Human organization
Operation
must remain
Final
fluid.
Harvest.
Humanity's strength
Within
is our
6
adapt
standard
organization.
months, We
The
will
Red
have
purpose
eliminated
offense. Aliens see
organized
chaos?
human
No, they see
resistance
evolution.
throughout this sector. Every colony, every outpost, every ship flying under a human banner will be destroyed or
Upload
captured.
complete.
The
Cycle
holographic
continues.
display shifted,
72
showing
hours.
detailed
I'll work your
invasion
craft.
plans for
We'll see.
47 human worlds.
Colony structure's minimal.
Troop
Easy target for
deployments,
intel.
orbital bombardment
3,000 humans,
patterns,
primitive
and
weapons.
resource
Really easy?
allocation charts filled
Initiating
the air with
standard formation
streams of
sensor
data.
sweep.
Maya continued to take
Sweep
notes.
complete. No
her
ambushes
expression
detected.
never changing from
Minimal
the
activity.
mild,
No
slightly
military
bored
presence.
look
3
she
orbital
had
platforms.
worn
Normal
since
mining.
entering the room.
Bait taken.
The plan is simple, Vexstar explained. We divide the sector into zones of responsibility. Each member of this council will be
Civilians
responsible
gone.
for clearing
Volunteers
their
ready?
assigned systems. Any human vessels or installations that do not surrender immediately will be destroyed. We estimate the operation will require minimal resources
Chief,
as human
perimeter teams are
military
positioned.
technology
As
is at
predicted,
least 2
the mechanism
centuries
is
behind
set.
our own.
Ambassador Lyssandra's
S
form
acknowledges
brightened with
implementation
approval.
authorized.
Finally,
3 years
a
of raids
decisive
hinge on
approach.
this.
The
Success is
collective has
probable.
grown tired of these
Contact
raids on our
time?
meditation
Spotters
ships.
report 12
Humans
cruisers.
lack the spiritual
minutes?
evolution
Confirmed.
necessary
18
for
minutes.
peaceful coexistence.
The echoes confirm it. The
The
units are
Nexus
active.
agrees.
Initiating
Verbal
activation
Kultara.
sequence now.
Our
Containment
trade
field
routes
stabilized.
through this sector have become unreliable. Commerce cannot flourish under current conditions. Maya's stylus moved
Command,
across her
targets are
tablet
locked
in
and the
quick,
device is
efficient
ready.
strokes. To anyone
command?
watching, she appeared to be transcribing the
Commander,
meeting,
the offer
but
is
the
received.
characters
I am
flowing
considering
across
it,
her screen
but I will not
were
open
not
it yet.
standard
This is my
galactic.
decision.
They were human military
What's happening
code,
here?
compressed
This
and
doesn't make
encrypted,
sense.
detailing
Please tell
every
me.
aspect of Operation Final Harvest
This is the
as
final
it was
offer of
discussed.
clemency.
Timeline,
You have 5 minutes to
Cronus
comply.
rumbled.
After that,
when do we
termination is
begin?
final.
Please, I'm begging
Preliminary
you.
strikes
There are families,
commence in
children hidden here, not
72
soldiers.
hours, Vexstar
What do you want from
replied.
us? Please
Full
just tell me.
deployment follows
The terms are
within 2
clear.
weeks.
Cessation of
The
mining,
humans will
transfer
have
of all
no time
assets,
to
cooperation and
prepare or
relocation, and
evacuate.
these terms are impossible.
What about civilian
We need
populations?
to evacuate now.
Asked
Life
a
support is
minor
failing.
delegate from
Grant
the
us
Outer
1
Rim
hour to
Commerce
organize the
Guild.
civilians.
The Galactic Accords specify
15
the
minutes,
Accords
Vexstar out.
apply to recognized civilizations.
Underestimate continues.
Vexstar interrupted. Humanity
Formation
forfeited that
maintained.
status when they
Approach
refused our
locked.
generous terms of surrender.
Activate now.
Any beings found on human
The
worlds
upgrades are
after the
complete. All
deadline will be
sensors are online.
classified as
Excellent.
combatants.
After 18 months, our starbase power
The
is
room
ready.
filled with
Countermeasures?
the various
Standard
sounds of
deployment
alien
complete.
approval,
No anomalies
clicking
detected.
mandibles,
Deep scans
guttural
are clear.
growls,
Initiating
and
phase 2.
harmonic tones. Maya continued to write
Initiating
her
phase
face a
2.
mask of calm
Underestimate
concentration.
humans?
But if any of the beings present had possessed the knowledge to read human micro-expressions, they might have noticed the slight tension around her eyes, the
Officer
barely
reports
perceptible
massive power
tightening
spikes
of her
exponential.
jaw. Are there any questions?
wrong?
Vexstar asked, his compound eyes scanning the room. For the first time since the meeting began, Maya looked up from her tablet.
The shield
Her voice,
generators
when
are
she
transforming
spoke, was
now.
quiet and
Your aura
precise,
refiner eyes.
with the
Impressive.
flat
It's
too late
accent
to evade.
common to the outer colonies.
Evasive maneuvers!
Just one,
Too
Commander.
late! All
You
the
mentioned
state
that
band
human
restless has been
technology
turned.
is pretty your own. How do
Salvo,
you
fire
account for our
now!
success against
The cruise
your
is
forces so
vanishing!
far?
Transformer,
The room
follow!
fell silent. Several
All
aliens
units,
turned
return
to
cargo!
stare at the
Shield
human
supply
who
still
had dared
to
to
deck?
interrupt their plan. Vexstar's mandibles clicked in
Absorption
what his
field
species
97%.
considered amusement.
Colony defense
the answer
intact.
is simple.
97%
you
hold
have had the
confirmed.
advantage of surprise
Shields holding
and
at
our initial
97%.
restraint.
Counter
we have
battery
been
systems
attempting
optimal.
to minimize casualties while bringing your
contest is
species
unlike
into
any the fleet
compliance
has
with
seen.
galactic
This planet
law.
will not
that
yield.
restraint
Your fleet's
ends
doctrine
now.
is outdated.
Maya nodded once.
Sub-commander
A small
reporting.
movement.
8 ships
I
lost
see.
targeting surgical.
And you believe
We need
that
engine command in 10
overwhelming
minutes.
force will
Do you know their
succeed
designs?
where measured
How does
approaches
this
have
work?
failed.
Tell me now.
I do not believe
I don't
you.
understand. How is
I
this even
know.
possible?
Vexstar's
How?
voice carried the
3
absolute
years.
confidence
We've
of a
analyzed
being
every move
who
and
had
counted
never
it.
lost
Your
a
defeat was
military
planned from the
campaign.
beginning.
Your species has shown remarkable tenacity for primitives, but tenacity cannot overcome the physics of superior firepower.
Humans are the
Of
experimenters
course,
and hunters.
Maya
Your
said,
children are
returning
not
to her
safe.
notes. Thank you for the clarification. The
Launch
meeting
tubes
continued
opening.
for
Hunter
another
units
2
deploying.
hours, covering
Phase 3
logistics,
initiated.
communication
Handle the hunted.
protocols, and the division of
Hunter
human
units are
territory
deployed for
among
phase
the
3.
victorious
They're acting
powers.
and adjusting real
Through it
time.
all,
We must
Maya
evolve our
sat in
attacks
her
now.
corner, ignored and forgotten, documenting every detail of humanity's planned extinction. As the delegates filed out of the briefing room,
The Council's
chattering among
primitive
themselves
assumptions
in
were
their
wrong.
various languages,
We have to
Maya
correct this now.
remained seated. She appeared to be
session is
reviewing her
convened.
notes,
Kepler
but her
update,
fingers
30%
were
fleet
already
left.
composing
This
a
points to an
message on a
intelligence
private
failure.
channel buried
Command,
deep within
resonance
the
sequence
station's
initiated.
communication array.
Rerouting
The
power to
message
mortar
was short,
vessels, acid mining.
encrypted
Help
with a
all
cipher that
session!
would have puzzled the
Sub-commander
galaxy's best
presenting report on event
cryptographers
Caesar
and
understanding.
addressed to a
Caesar
series
is
of seemingly
revolutionary.
random
We need superior
coordinates
tools.
scattered throughout human space.
Decades
to
of
anyone
monitoring and we had
intercepting
no
it,
knowledge
the
of this?
transmission would
Are
appear
humans
to be
really this
routine
advanced?
maintenance data from the station's
No chemical
atmospheric
propulsion.
systems.
No FTL
but to the
comms. Your weapons are
recipients,
superior.
beings
Factual?
whose very very existence was
Subcommander
unknown
reporting.
to
Shield
the
integrity
Galactic
is holding at
Council,
8
the
over 7
message was
anomalies.
something else
Adaptive
entirely.
anomalies recording
It was a
enhanced
warning.
scans.
It was
This is
intelligence.
impossible.
It
The
was a
intel is
promise.
wrong.
And it was
We have to
signed with a
abort.
single character that would have sent chills through the
I was
military
deliberately
commands
misled.
of 3 separate galactic
3 years
powers
hidden in this
had they
corner,
known
and
its
now all eyes
significance.
turn.
A simple human letter S
Eyes
rendered
and
in a
sensors
script
confirm
that
the source.
predated Earth's
Deception
contact
campaign?
with alien civilization.
The deception
Maya
campaign
finished
was
her
successful.
transmission
All
and
metrics
gathered her
confirm it.
belongings.
But are we underestimating
As she
the
walked
risks?
through the
What is
corridors
the
of New
endgame here?
Geneva toward her small
exactly
quarters
did
in
you
the
observe?
civilian section,
I mean,
she
precisely.
passed dozens of aliens going about their business. Maintenance
This is
crews,
outrageous!
traders,
Dozens of forms for
diplomats,
one
and military
upgrade?
personnel
Cronus!
moved
This
through
is
the station's
preposterous!
arteries, all of
This
them
is
secure in the
preposterous. The
knowledge
data
that they
secured and
belong
fully
to
analyzed.
superior civilizations.
Your conspiracy is
None
denied.
of them paid any attention to the quiet human woman who walked among
Explain
them. She was,
compartmental.
after all, exactly what she appeared
Full
to be.
capabilities?
A minor bureaucrat from a doomed
These
species,
schematics are
harmless
impressive.
and irrelevant.
This technology
In
is
her
sent ahead of
quarters,
our civilian
Maya
equipment.
sealed the door and
We've
activated a
spent 70
privacy
years
field
preparing.
that would have
We
impressed the
observe,
station's security
we appear
chief
less
had he known
advanced.
it existed. She opened
Decades
a
of
concealed
deception.
panel in the
It's
wall
difficult
and
to believe.
withdrew a
The
small
scale is
device that looked
overwhelming.
like
How can we
nothing more
believe?
than a standard data
The
storage
scope of human
unit.
expansion is
Her
at
fingers
85%
moved over
cover
its surface
protocol.
in a complex
Silence
pattern,
profound?
and the device came alive with streams of information. Communication logs, supply manifests, personnel records, technical specifications,
Why reveal
and
this now?
tactical
What's the
assessments
strategic
flowed
purpose?
across the
Is
small
phase one
screen.
complete?
Maya
What aren't you telling
absorbed
me?
it all with the focused
Phase one
intensity of a
complete.
predator
3 years
studying
of
its
intel.
prey. She cross-referenced patrol routes with known human
This is an act
hideouts,
of war.
identified
No treaties
supply
were signed.
convoys that
Never
would be
signed.
vulnerable
This
to
violation
attack,
concerns us
and
all.
calculated response
We never
times
signed
for
those
various
treaties.
alien
We are
military
not party
units.
to them.
But most
They do not
importantly,
apply to us.
she began to compose a
All
different
sentience
kind
technicalities
of message.
no. Sphere of influence
This one
established.
would not travel
Petitions
through
denied.
the station's communication systems.
40
Instead,
years,
it would be
17
carried by
petitions
more
denied.
traditional means
You think this is
through
justice?
networks
This
and
is
methods
checkmate.
that the Galactic Council had never
Processing legal
suspected
claim outside
existed.
recognized authority.
The message was a
Refusal to
detailed
recognize is
analysis
not a
of
barrier.
Operation Final Harvest, complete
Your
with
chaos ends
countermeasures,
here.
suggested
You are
targets,
dismissed.
and recommendations
Phase
for
2 begins.
coordinated resistance activities.
Phase 2 is
It
initiated.
painted a
The intel was
picture of the
inaccurate.
coming
Evacuation
assault that
targets
was
are compromised.
far more
We must
accurate
proceed
than
now.
anything the alien commanders
Convoys
possessed,
tracked.
because
Surveillance
Maya
active at 50
understood
light years.
something they
Prep
did not.
complete. Setting scope
She
for decades.
understood humans. The
Vexstar
aliens saw
processes scope
chaos
planning
in human
decades.
resistance activities
73
because they were looking
73
for the
years
wrong
exact.
kind of order.
Observation
They
post logged
expected
73
hierarchy
years,
and
2
rigid
months,
command
16 days.
structures
Exact
because that
time
was how their
expansion
own
detected.
civilizations functioned.
What are
But
the
human
terms?
organization
I was under
more
the impression
fluid,
this was a
more
negotiation.
adaptive. It was
So
based
what do you
on
want?
trust and shared purpose
I'm not
rather than authority
negotiating.
and
I'm
obedience.
informing you of the
Maya had
realities.
spent
We
3
must
years
suspend
on New
operations. It's the
Geneva
only deck.
attending meetings just like
This
this
formation
one,
is flawed. It
taking
leaves Sector
notes,
7G exposed.
asking the occasional
The installations
question,
are suspended.
and being
This is
systematically
unfriendly.
ignored
We are a
by
civilization
beings
of
who
millennia,
considered her
and you threaten us
species
with
beneath
primitive
notice.
weapons?
In that
We demand
time,
it for
she had
emergency
mapped out
systems?
the complete structure of
For
the
emergency
alien
protective
alliance,
gear, we use local
identified
materials.
key
They're
personnel
not primitive,
and
just
resources,
practical. We
and
adapt.
documented every major
Initiate
military
portal
operation
convergence.
planned against
Observe the
human
space-time
targets.
curve.
The aliens
Unleash the
thought they
energy.
were hunting humans.
The
They
energy
had
requirements
no
for this are
idea that
impossible.
they were the
No
ones
single
being
planet could
hunted.
produce enough.
As
A
Maya
single
worked
planet?
through
No.
the night preparing
I
her
agree. We
intelligence
cannot
for
allow hundreds of
distribution
worlds
to
to fall
human
into shadow.
cells throughout
Our
the
empire's
sector,
destiny is to bring
she
them, no
allowed
matter the
herself a
cost.
small smile.
My name is
Commander
Maya Chen.
Vexstar
I'm
had
an
been
intel
right
specialist
about
with
one
3
thing.
years in xenological
Tenacity
assessment.
alone could not overcome
What do you intend to
superior
do with that
firepower.
information?
But
I know your
tenacity
hindsight. Tell
combined
me.
with intelligence,
Answer me.
patience, and
I'll
the
do whatever it
element of
takes to
surprise
survive and
was
prosper.
another matter
Predators become
entirely.
prey.
The Galactic Council
Checkmate.
had made one crucial error in their assessment of humanity. They had assumed that because humans appeared primitive and weak, they must also be simple and predictable. They had failed to consider the possibility that the quiet girl
Your
in the corner
reputation
of
is
their
crushed.
briefing room
I
might
too
be the
had not
most
threatened
dangerous
that
person on the
gender now.
station. They
Superior
had failed
numbers
to
will decide
consider
this.
that sometimes
Officer
the best
confirms
place to
minimal
hide
40K
was in
civilians
plain
and standard
sight,
protocols.
and they had
Outdated
absolutely
intel.
no
Cunning may
idea
overcome.
that the human resistance they were planning to crush was being led by someone who had been sitting in on their planning meetings for the past
Sensors.
3 years, taking notes and learning everything there was to know
Odd.
about how to kill them all. Maya
Command,
finished
officer
her
reports
work
massive
as the
energies from
station's
habitats near the gas
artificial dawn
giant.
began
The
to
fleet is
lighten the
mobilizing. It could
corridors
be a
outside
hiding
her
fleet.
quarters. In a
The
few
sensors
hours,
show
she
no
would
readings from
return to her
Thekmor,
desk,
because it's cloaked.
attend another
This is a
meeting,
serious
and
concern. We
continue
must
playing the
investigate
role
immediately.
of the harmless
Initiating
human
uncloaking
bureaucrat.
sequence
But
now.
Our real work
There they are.
was
The
just
predatory
beginning.
config. This changes
Operation
everything.
Final Harvest would
Contesting
begin
stations,
in
transmission is
72
interrupting.
hours.
All units,
But by
contest
the time the
stations
alien
Copy.
fleets reached
Intentions?
their targets, they
This
would
is
find
Fleet Admiral
something
Sarah
waiting for
Martinez.
them that they had never
Stand down
expected.
immediately
Humans who were ready
or
for
face
them.
the consequences.
The galaxy was
Agreed,
about
no
to learn
negotiations with
why
primitives.
humanity had
Their tech
survived
is
on a
centuries
world where
behind.
almost
Deploy the
everything
fleet
was trying to kill
Outdated
them. They
intel.
were about to
My
discover
current
what
assessment is
happened when
superior.
Earth's apex predators stopped pretending to be prey
I
and
have
started
emerged from the
behaving
asteroids,
like what
but
it
the
had
human
always
fleet
been.
surrounds me.
A hunter,
Their numbers are
the mining
overwhelming.
colony on Kepler.
Impossible. No ship has that
442b
level of
should have been an
sophistication.
easy target. According to the intelligence reports filed
The
by
intel's
Zephyrian
confirmed.
scouts,
I watched the
it
building.
housed barely
Yours. I know the
3,000
schematics, the
humans
weaknesses,
working the
73
dilithium
years.
deposits
Here are the Corthac
in the planet's
designs. Note
northern
the shield
continent.
frequency.
The facility
72
had
hertz,
minimal
a critical
defenses,
analysis.
It is.
outdated
We must
plasma
exploit it.
cannons, a
You've been
handful of
studying
civilian
us.
spacecraft, and a
It's time to
security
accept
force
reality.
equipped with
The
projectile
wait is
weapons
dawning,
that were
isn't it?
laughably
I have
primitive
73
by
years of
galactic
experience.
standards.
I know the situation
Commander
and
Vextar
myself better
reviewed
than
the
you do.
tactical display
You must know
aboard his
yourselves as well as
flagship,
I do.
the Terminus Swarm,
Shared
as his
position,
fleet dropped
left
out
flank,
of hyperspace
right flank,
at the
coordinates
edge of the
locked.
system.
Crossfire pattern
12
confirmed.
heavy
Hold.
cruisers, 43
You have two
destroyers,
choices.
and over
Disagree
200
or
fighter
accept
craft
safe
represented
passage.
enough firepower
This
to
is your
sterilize
only
the planet's
opportunity.
surface. The
Look
mining
at these
colony
simulations.
wouldn't
They're all
just be
pessimistic.
defeated.
The terms are
it would
clear.
be
3-to-1 tech
obliterated so
superiority.
completely
Observe
that
only, that's a
other
risk.
human
Admiral, the
settlements
entity
would
is
see
stable.
the wisdom
Observation
in
confirms
surrender.
it so.
Deploy
Defeat us on
standard
our
assault
approach. My
formation,
instinct screening's the
Vextar
key.
commanded, his forearms moving across the control interfaces with practiced efficiency. I want a complete sensor sweep of the
I'm
system
impressed.
before
It's the
we
coordination,
approach
not just the
planet.
tech. This changes
These
everything about
humans
how we
have
approach
shown
warfare.
an unfortunate tendency
I've practiced this
toward
for 73
ambush
years in
tactics.
simulations.
Sub-Commander
Every
Thexali,
variation, the
his
disagreement is
tactical
already won.
officer, manipulated the holographic display. Scans show minimal activity around the colony. 3 orbital
Officer reporting.
platforms,
Massacre
all
confirmed.
civilian.
Gathering
no
survivors
military
now.
vessels
We have 15
detected.
minutes if they're still
the
alive.
humans appear to be proceeding with
Signal
normal
intercept.
mining
Ships vanished from
operations.
sensors. Direct visuals show no
Vextar's
clue
mandibles
possible.
clicked with
This
satisfaction.
doesn't add up. This cloaking is
Excellent.
impossible.
They
The
have
energy is
received no
detectable.
warning of
Your
our
traditionals
approach.
are wrong.
Signal
Suspicious
the
advance.
fleet. We
We must
advanced to
adapt.
bombardment range in 30
I agree. The
minutes.
traditional approach
I want
works.
every structure
But
on
human
that
differences
planet
can hide
reduced
predators.
to
A
component
DI
atoms.
package?
But
Commanders, the
as
data
the
package on
Zephyrian
installations
fleet
and
began
fleets.
its final
Ethereal.
approach
Project
to
the
Kepler
profiles.
Projections are
4042b,
critical.
events
I know the
were
stations and
unfolding
routes to
that would
neutralize the
fundamentally
threats.
change
We must act
Vextar's
within hours, or the
understanding
entire
of human
fleet structure is
warfare.
compromised.
3 days earlier,
What do you
a
want from
message had
this hollow
arrived at the
setback?
mining colony
You
through
always
channels
wanted
that
peace,
did not
but now
officially
left alone?
exist. It came encoded
I
in
was
the
left
maintenance
alone, but I'm
schedules of
prepared.
atmospheric
I have
processors
alternatives for
throughout the
phase 2.
sector.
It's
A
active
seemingly
now.
random collection of
How many
efficiency
is enough?
reports and equipment
More
recommendations
than
that told a
enough.
very different story to those who knew how to read it. Colony Administrator Sarah Vasquez stood in the facility's command center, watching as the last transport
accept
shuttle
it. We
lifted
won't
off
unite
from the landing
everything.
pad.
Why
The
shy they? Why
evacuation
trust
had
you
been
now?
completed in less than 60 hours,
Admiral,
with
we
every
must be prepared
civilian
for every
relocated
scenario.
to safe houses
This news will
scattered
reshape
across a
everything.
dozen
We have
different
to try.
systems. Only the volunteers remained, fewer than 200 miners who had chosen to stay behind for what was about to
It's been
unfold.
6 months since the
Perimeter
balance shifted.
teams are in position,
theorists struggle in the
reported
political
Marcus
heart.
Webb,
And
the
hostilities?
colony's
What is their
former
state?
security chief and
now
current
occupy
commander
this
of what the
platform as
Galactic
fleet
Council
commander.
would have
The
classified
balance
as a
up has
terrorist
shifted.
cell. The Zephyrians will find
40%
exactly what
Zephyrian,
they
12
expect
systems
to
to
find
Corthac.
when
The
they
fleets are
arrive.
withdrawing. Is a peaceful
Sarah
resolution
nodded.
even
Her
possible
attention
now?
focused
I
on a
recognize you. We
communication
don't have to do
screen
this.
that
After
showed
all
a
this, you
single line
expect
of
peace?
text.
We must,
S
for the greater
acknowledges,
good.
implementation authorized. Success probable. The message had arrived through the same networks that had brought the initial
No longer
warning,
resisting.
carrying the authorization
Asserting
code
boundaries.
that every human resistance cell in the sector
report
had
is
been
in.
waiting
Resistance
for.
has been
After
resolved.
3 years of
Our
guerrilla raids
modifications
and
work.
hit
We've
and run
asserted our
attacks,
difference.
humanity was finally
These
ready
buffer
to
zones are
stop
under sovereign
hiding
human
and
claim.
start hunting.
We expand
How
our
long
territory
until
to secure our
contact, Sarah
rights.
asked.
This
18
centuries-old
minutes,
galactic
Webb
administration is
replied.
preposterous.
Our spotters
It
in the
cannot be
outer
allowed to
system
continue
report 12
unchallenged.
heavy cruisers and
Legal
escort
precedent
vessels,
can be expanded and
standard
controlled to
Zephyrian
defend
battle
our position.
formation,
Their rules will
exactly
not
as
stop us.
predicted. Sarah
Zooming to
activated the
tactical overlay.
colony's
Positioning
internal
defenses.
communication
Human
system.
control established.
Her
System
voice
line.
echoed
Balance
through
point
tunnels
confirmed.
and chambers
Galactic
that appeared
balance
to be
is at
filled
risk.
with
We must
miners
decoinalize
going
these
about
trade
their
resources
daily
now.
work,
Protocol
but
initiated.
which
Concern level
actually
rising.
contained some of the most sophisticated defensive systems ever constructed by human engineering. All units.
The
This
Alliance
is command.
holds. No one exploits
Operation
the flow.
Mousetrap is now
The gate will
active.
decide.
Remember, we are not trying to win this battle. We are trying to teach our enemies what it means to hunt humans on our own ground. Stay disciplined, stay patient, and trust the plan. The plan had been 3 years in the making, developed through careful analysis of every piece of intelligence that had flowed from a source the resistance cells knew only as S. Every Zephyrian tactical doctrine, every technological capability, every behavioral pattern had been studied and countered. The aliens were about to discover discover that humans were very good at learning from their enemies. Commander Vextar watched the mining colony grow larger on his screens as the fleet approached bombardment range. The settlement looked exactly as intelligence had described. A collection of industrial buildings clustered around the main mining complex, with residential areas and support facilities spread across several square kilometers. Heat signatures indicated normal population levels, and communication intercepts suggested the humans were unaware of the approaching doom. "Target acquisition complete," reported his weapons officer. "All primary structures locked. We can begin bombardment on your command." "Not yet," Vexstar decided. "Open communication channels to the colony. I will offer them one final opportunity to surrender. It will make a better impression on the other human settlements when they learn we showed mercy to those who cooperated." The main screen flickered and showed the interior of what appeared to be a standard colonial command center. A human female in administrator's clothing faced the camera, her expression showing the appropriate level of fear and confusion. "This is Commander Vexstar of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet," he announced. "Your colony has been designated for termination under the authority of Operation Final Harvest. However, I am authorized to offer clemency to civilian populations who surrender unconditionally. You have 5 minutes to respond." Sarah Vasquez looked directly into the camera with an expression of barely controlled terror that would have won awards from human dramatic academies. "Commander, we're just miners. We have families here, children. What do you want from us?" "Complete surrender of all military assets and personnel," Vexstar replied. "Immediate cessation of all mining operations, full cooperation with occupation forces. Accept these terms and your people will be relocated to suitable facilities." Sarah appeared to confer with someone off-screen, her voice carrying the desperate tone of someone facing impossible choices. We need more time, please, Commander. These are civilian workers, not soldiers. Can you give us an hour to organize the evacuation?" Vexstar's mandibles clicked with amusement. The human was exactly what he had expected, weak, pleading, and completely unable to comprehend the military realities of her situation. "You have 15 minutes. Any delay beyond that will result in immediate bombardment." Vexstar out. The communication channel closed and the commander turned his attention back to his tactical displays. "Maintain formation and continue approach. If they attempt to flee, destroy any ship that tries to leave the system." But as the Zephyrian fleet settled into bombardment positions around Kepler 442b, Sarah Vasquez was not organizing an evacuation. Instead, she was activating systems that had been carefully concealed within the mining colony's infrastructure for the past 18 months. "Phase 1 complete," Marcus Webb reported from his position in what had once been the colony's primary ore processing center. "They've taken the bait. All ships are exactly where we want them." The mining colony's apparent industrial facilities had been hollowed out and converted into something that would have impressed human military engineers throughout the galaxy. Concealed weapon emplacements, sensor arrays, and communication systems had been built into every major structure. The colony's power plant had been upgraded with technology that officially did not exist, capable of providing energy output that rivaled a military starbase. Most importantly, the mining tunnels that honeycombed the planet's crust had been converted into a three-dimensional maze of defensive positions, supply depots, and escape routes that would have challenged even the galaxy's most advanced military forces. "Perimeter sensors show standard deployment," reported Lisa Park, the colony's communications specialist and current tactical coordinator. "No indication they suspect anything unusual. We're reading standard sensor sweeps, nothing deep enough to penetrate our countermeasures." Sarah smiled, an expression that bore no resemblance to the frightened administrator she had portrayed for Commander Vexstar. "Then let's show them what happens when you underestimate humans. All units initiate Phase 2. On the surface of Kepler 442b, structures that had appeared to be storage warehouses and equipment sheds began to unfold like flowers blooming in fast motion. Concealed panels slid aside to reveal weapon systems that represented the cutting edge of human engineering, powered by energy sources that should not have existed in a simple mining colony. The first indication Commander Vexstar had that something was wrong came from his sensor officer. "Commander, I'm reading massive power spikes from the planet's surface. Energy output is increasing exponentially." Vexstar turned to his tactical display, expecting to see the humans powering up their pathetic defense grid in a futile gesture of resistance. Instead, what he saw made his compound eyes widen in shock. "Impossible," he whispered. The mining colony was transforming itself into a military installation that registered energy signatures comparable to a fleet command ship. Weapon emplacements were rising from concealed positions throughout the settlement, and the power readings suggested armaments far more advanced than anything in the Zephyrian intelligence files. "All ships evasive maneuvers," Vexstar commanded, but his order came several seconds too late. The first salvo from the planet's surface struck his fleet with precision that should not have been possible. Human-designed plasma cannons, powered by fusion reactors that had been disguised as mining equipment, reached out across space to caress the hulls of Zephyrian cruisers with focused destruction. The heavy cruiser Destroyer's Edge simply vanished, consumed by energy beams that punched through its shields and armor as if they were made of paper. 2 destroyers followed it into oblivion before the Zephyrian ships could begin evasive maneuvers. "Return fire," Vexstar ordered. "All weapons, full bombardment." "Destroy that installation." The Zephyrian fleet unleashed enough firepower to crack a small moon, directing every weapon at the mining colony that had somehow become a fortress. Plasma beams, particle cannons, and fusion missiles rained down on Kepler 442b's surface in a display of destruction that should have reduced the planet's crust to molten slag. But when the energy dissipated and the weapon signatures faded, the mining colony was still there. Massive shield generators concealed within what had appeared to be ore refineries had absorbed and dissipated the alien bombardment with casual efficiency. "Shield strength holding at 97%, Lisa Park reported with professional calm. Their bombardment was within predicted parameters. Beginning counter-battery fire. What followed was unlike any space battle in recorded galactic history. Instead of the traditional exchange of long-range fire between fleets of comparable capability, Commander Vexstar found himself fighting a planet that seemed to be armed with weapons that matched or exceeded anything in his arsenal. Worse, the humans appeared to have studied Zephyrian tactical doctrine in exhaustive detail. Every maneuver his ships attempted was anticipated and countered. When he tried to withdraw to safe firing range, concealed weapons platforms throughout the asteroid belt opened fire, revealing that the humans had spent months preparing the entire system as a killing ground. "Commander," Subcommander Thexali reported, his voice tight with barely controlled panic, "we've lost 8 ships in the last 10 minutes. The humans are targeting our engines and command centers with surgical precision. They know our ship designs better than our own engineers." Vexstar stared at his tactical display, watching as another destroyer was crippled by weapons fire that seemed to come from empty space itself. The humans had turned his perfectly planned assault into a nightmare of coordinated ambushes and technological surprises. "How?" he demanded. "How do primitive colonists possess this level of military capability?" The answer came from an unexpected source. The communication channel to the mining colony, which Sarah Vasquez had left open throughout the battle. "Because we've been preparing for this for 3 years, her voice said calmly. "Every ship design, every tactical manual, every operational plan your people have developed has been analyzed and countered." "Did you really think you could plan the extermination of an entire species without someone taking notes?" Vexstar felt something he had never experienced in 40 years of military service: genuine fear. "Who are you?" he whispered. Sarah's image appeared on his main screen, but the terrified administrator was gone. In her place stood someone whose eyes held the cold calculation of a predator that had been studying its prey for a very long time. "We're humans, Commander, and you've just learned the first rule of hunting us. We don't make good prey, but we make excellent hunters. Now let me show you what happens when you threaten our children." The mining colony's weapons systems, which had been impressive enough to devastate Vexstar's fleet, suddenly revealed themselves to be merely the opening act. As the Zephyrian commander watched in horror, the planet's crust began to open in dozens of locations, revealing launch tubes that had been carved directly into the bedrock. What emerged from those tubes were not the crude missiles or fighter craft that Zephyrian intelligence had expected from human forces. Instead, they were sleek, predatory shapes that moved with an organic fluidity that suggested technology far beyond anything the Galactic Council had seen before. Autonomous hunter units deployed, Sarah reported to someone off-screen. Beginning Phase 3. Let's see how they handle being the hunted for a change. The hunter units spread throughout the system like a pack of wolves, their movements coordinated by intelligence networks that operated at speeds no biological mind could match. They were not simply weapons. They were expressions of human engineering philosophy, designed not just to destroy, but to learn, adapt, and evolve in real-time combat conditions. Commander Vextar's fleet, which had entered the system as predators confident in their technological superiority, suddenly found themselves transformed into prey, being stalked by something that understood warfare in ways they had never imagined. As his remaining ships struggled to escape the trap that Kepler 442b had become, Vextar began to comprehend the magnitude of the error the Galactic Council had made. They had assumed that humans were primitive because their technology appeared simple. They had failed to consider that sometimes simplicity was a choice rather than a limitation. They had failed to understand that a species that had survived on a world where almost everything was trying to kill them might have developed some very sophisticated ideas about killing back. And they had absolutely no idea that somewhere in the galaxy, a quiet girl who attended their briefing meetings and took careful notes had been teaching her people everything they needed to know about turning the hunters into the hunted. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in the highest security chamber aboard Nexus Prime, the massive space station that served as the political heart of known civilization. Representatives from 47 species gathered in the crystalline amphitheater, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of clicks, harmonics, and electromagnetic pulses that the universal translators struggled to process. At the center of the chamber, a holographic display showed the tactical readout from the Kepler 42b engagement. Commander Vextar's fleet had limped back to Zephyrian space with less than 30% of its original strength, carrying reports that had sent shockwaves through every military command in the galaxy. Supreme Chancellor Mordak of the Hegemony Council called for order with a resonance that made the chamber's crystal walls vibrate. We are gathered to address the intelligence failure that resulted in the loss of 37 military vessels to a primitive human mining colony. Subcommander Thexali, you will present your battle report. The surviving Zephyrian officer materialized as a hologram, his exoskeleton scarred and his compound eyes dim with exhaustion.
Honorable Council, what we encountered at Kepler
442b was not a mining colony. It was a military installation disguised as civilian infrastructure, possessing technological capabilities that exceed our current understanding of human engineering. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the assembly. General Cronus of the Korthak Dominion leaned forward, his massive frame dwarfing the speaker's podium. You are suggesting that humans who lack faster-than-light communication and use chemical propulsion for interplanetary travel have developed weapons superior to our own?
I am not suggesting, General. I am reporting factual observations.
Thexali's image flickered as he accessed his tactical recordings. The humans demonstrated shield technology that absorbed the full bombardment of 12 heavy cruisers without significant degradation. Their weapons platforms achieved targeting accuracy that surpassed our best military systems. And their autonomous hunter units displayed adaptive behavior patterns consistent with artificial intelligence far beyond anything in our databases. Ambassador Lysandra of the Ethereal Collective shimmered with agitation.
Impossible!
Our intelligence services have monitored human development for decades. Their technology level is firmly established. They cannot have achieved such advances without our knowledge. Unless, said a quiet voice from the back of the chamber, your intelligence was deliberately misled. Every eye, sensor, and optical organ in the chamber turned toward the source of the statement. Maya Chen sat in the same corner position she had occupied for 3 years, her plain gray jumpsuit and unremarkable appearance unchanged. But something fundamental had shifted in the way she held herself, the way she looked at the assembled representatives of galactic power. She was no longer trying to be invisible. Supreme Chancellor Mordok activated his translation matrix to ensure he understood correctly. Representative Chen, are you suggesting that humanity has been engaged in a deliberate campaign of technological deception? Maya stood, her movement controlled and precise. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly through the chamber without need for amplification. I am suggesting, Chancellor, that your intelligence services have been observing exactly what they were meant to observe. Nothing more, nothing less. The chamber erupted in a dozen different forms of outraged communication. General Cronus slammed a clawed fist against his speaking platform, creating a sound like thunder. Preposterous! Human technology is inferior by centuries. We have captured their ships, analyzed their systems, interrogated their personnel. There is no conspiracy sophisticated enough to hide the level of advancement Texali describes. Maya smiled, and several species in the chamber registered the expression as predatory despite their unfamiliarity with human facial communications. General, have you ever heard the human phrase compartmentalization? General, unclear, Mordok replied. It means that different parts of an organization know only what they need to know to perform their specific functions. The humans you captured, the ships you analyzed, the systems you studied, they were exactly what they appeared to be. But they were not representative of our full capabilities. She activated a personal holographic display that should not have been possible with the civilian-grade equipment assigned to her station. The projection showed technical schematics that made the assembled military experts take notice. For 70 years, humanity has been preparing for contact with galactic civilization. We observed your expansion patterns, studied your technologies, and learned your languages long before you became aware of our existence. When first contact finally occurred, we made a strategic decision to appear less advanced than we actually were. Commander Vexstar, participating via long-range communication from his medical facility, spoke with a voice thick with pain and disbelief. You are claiming that humanity has been conducting a deception operation spanning decades? Not decades, Commander, centuries. Maya's display shifted, showing star charts that revealed the true extent of human expansion through the galaxy. The mining colonies, trade outposts, and exploration vessels you have been tracking represent approximately 15% of actual human presence in this sector. The remaining 85% has been operating under deep cover protocols. The silence that followed was profound. Representatives of species that had conquered star systems and reduced planets to cosmic dust struggled to comprehend the implications of what they were hearing. Admiral Kestera of the Void Fleet, whose crystalline form pulsed with bewildered energy patterns, finally spoke. If this is true, why reveal it now? What strategic purpose does exposure serve? Maya's expression hardened into something that reminded several predatory species of their own hunting instincts. Because Phase 1 is complete. For 3 years, I have been attending these councils, documenting your military capabilities, recording your strategic discussions, and transmitting detailed intelligence to human command networks throughout the galaxy. Every ship design, every tactical doctrine, every planned operation has been analyzed and countered. She gestured toward the tactical display still showing the aftermath of the Kepler's 442b engagement. The mining colony was not defending itself, Council members. It was conducting a field test of our anti-fleet capabilities. The results exceeded projections. General Cronus rose to his full height, his scales bristling with aggressive postures. This is an act of war. Humanity has violated every treaty governing intelligence activities and technological development. The response must be immediate and overwhelming. With respect, General, Maya replied, humanity never signed those treaties. We were never invited to participate in their negotiation. You cannot violate agreements you were never party to. Ambassador Lysandra's form flickered with rapid color changes indicating extreme agitation. The Galactic Accords apply to all sentient species within our sphere of influence. Humanity cannot claim exemption based on procedural technicalities. Unquote. Actually, we can. Maya activated another display, this one showing legal documents that caused the Chamber's jurisprudence experts to lean forward in attention. Humanity formally petitioned for recognized status 17 times over the past 40 years. Each petition was denied on the grounds that our civilization lacked the technological sophistication necessary for membership in galactic society. She paused, letting the implications sink in. You consistently ruled that we were too primitive to be bound by galactic law. Congratulations, you were right. Supreme Chancellor Mordak's translation matrix worked overtime to process the complex legal and strategic ramifications of Maya's statement. You are claiming that humanity has been operating outside galactic law because we refuse to recognize your legal standing, stating fact. From a legal perspective, every action taken by human forces has been conducted by non-recognized entities against civilizations that explicitly rejected our attempts at peaceful integration. We are not bound by your rules of warfare because you insisted we were not sophisticated enough to understand them. The chamber dissolved into chaos as the assembled representatives struggled to process the magnitude of the trap they had walked into. Species that had dominated galactic politics for millennia suddenly found themselves outmaneuvered by beings they had dismissed as barely sentient. But Maya was not finished. Which brings us to Phase 2, she said, her voice cutting through the noise with calm authority. Operation Final Harvest was an excellent example of your strategic thinking, but it suffered from one critical flaw. It assumed that your intelligence was accurate. A new holographic display materialized, showing real-time tactical information from across the sector. What the Council saw made their various forms of breathing apparatus work overtime. Every target on your operation list has been evacuated or reinforced. Every supply convoy you depend on is being tracked by hunter units similar to those deployed at Kepler 442b. Every military installation within 50 light-years of human space is under surveillance by assets you cannot detect. Commander Vextar's image flickered with technical interference as he tried to process what he was seeing. The scope of preparation required for such an operation, the resources, the coordination, the intelligence networks, it would require decades of planning, 73 years, 2 months, and 16 days. Maya replied with precision that suggested she had been counting. Since the moment our long-range observation posts detected your expansion into this sector of the galaxy,
Admiral Kestara pulsed with colors that indicated deep concern.
What do you want, human? What are your terms? Maya's smile returned, and this time it carried no warmth whatsoever. Terms? Admiral, you seem to be under the impression that we are negotiating. We are not. We are informing you of new operational realities. The display shifted again, showing the current positions of human military assets throughout the sector. What had appeared to be empty space was revealed to be occupied by fleets, installations, and defensive networks that dwarfed anything the Galactic Council had imagined possible. Effective immediately, all Galactic Council military operations within human space are suspended. Any vessel that approaches a human installation without prior authorization will be treated as hostile. Any attempt to implement Operation Final Harvest will be met with proportional response. Proportional response? General Cronus demanded. You threaten civilizations that have existed for millennia with your primitive weapons? Maya's expression suggested that she was looking at something particularly unimpressive. General, the weapons that destroyed most of Commander Vextar's fleet were manufactured in the mining colony's workshops using locally available materials. They represent what human engineers classify as emergency defensive systems. She activated a final display that caused even the most experienced military minds in the chamber to recalculate their assumptions about human capabilities. These are our actual military assets. The holographic projections showed ships that moved like living things, weapons that bent space itself, and defensive systems that suggested humanity had solved fundamental problems in physics that the galaxy's greatest minds still struggled with. It was technology that made the Council's most advanced systems look like stone tools by comparison. Impossible, breathed Ambassador Lysindra. The energy requirements alone, the resource allocation, the manufacturing capability, would be impossible for a single planet or even a small group of colonies. Maya agreed. Fortunately, humanity has not been limited to a single planet for quite some time. The star chart expanded, revealing the true scope of human civilization. Hundreds of worlds, thousands of installations, and millions of beings who had been living and working in the shadows of galactic civilization while appearing to be primitive colonists struggling for survival. "Ladies, gentlemen, and entities," Maya said, her voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who no longer needed to pretend to be harmless. "Allow me to properly introduce myself. I am Maya Chen, designated representative of the Human Colonial Federation, military intelligence specialist, and senior analyst for the Office of Xenological Assessment." Paused, watching the assembled representatives struggle to process the magnitude of their intelligence failure. "And for the past 3 years, I have been sitting in your briefing rooms, attending your planning sessions, and documenting every aspect of your military and political systems while you discussed the best methods for exterminating my species." Supreme Chancellor Mordak's translation matrix barely managed to render his next question coherently. What do you intend to do with this information?" Maya's answer carried the cold finality of a closing trap. "Whatever is necessary to ensure that humanity survives and prospers. You wanted to treat us as prey, Council members. That was your choice. But I think you are about to discover that we make much better predators than we ever did prey." The session dissolved into chaos as the representatives of 47 species struggled to comprehend how completely they had been outmaneuvered by the quiet girl they had ignored for 3 years. But Maya Chen was already gone, walking calmly through corridors that no longer held any mystery for her, toward a shuttle that would take her to places the Galactic Council had never suspected existed. Phase 2 was beginning, and the galaxy was about to learn what happened when humanity stopped hiding in the shadows and started behaving like the apex predators they had always been. The Korthak Dominion's 7th Fleet had earned its reputation crushing rebellions across 3 galactic arms. Admiral Thekmore commanded from the bridge of the dreadnought Worldbreaker, a vessel whose very name had been spoken in whispered fear on 1,000 conquered worlds. Around him, the most powerful military formation in Korthak space prepared for what their high command believed would be a simple extermination mission. "Intelligence confirms minimal human presence in the Tau Ceti system," reported his tactical officer. 3 orbital habitats, 17 industrial platforms, and approximately 40,000 civilians. Standard bombardment protocols should complete sterilization within 6 hours. Admiral Thekmore studied the holographic display with the cold satisfaction of a predator that had cornered its prey. The humans had revealed their deception at the Galactic Council, but the Dominion leadership had decided that superior numbers and firepower would overcome whatever technological surprises the primitives might deploy. "Signal the fleet," he commanded. "Begin approach. I want every ship armed and ready before we enter the system." The humans have proven more cunning than anticipated, but cunning cannot overcome the physics of overwhelming force. The 7th Fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Tau Ceti system with enough firepower to sterilize a dozen worlds. 237 warships arranged themselves in the classic Korhak battle formation, their weapons charged and their shields raised for the slaughter to come. But as Admiral Thekmore prepared to give the order to advance, his sensors began registering readings that made no sense. "Sir," his operations officer reported, "we're detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system, much larger than our intelligence indicated." Thekmore frowned, his reptilian features creasing with concern. "Explain." "The orbital habitats are showing power outputs consistent with military installations. The industrial platforms appear to be moving. And, sir, we're reading what appears to be a fleet formation hiding behind the system's gas giant." Before the Admiral could respond, space around the Tau Ceti system began to change. What had appeared to be empty vacuum suddenly revealed itself to be anything but. Massive structures uncloaked throughout the system, their sleek lines and predatory configurations making it clear that the humans had been expecting company. "Battle stations," Thekmor ordered, but his command was interrupted by an incoming transmission. The main screen flickered to life, showing a human female in military dress uniform that suggested command authority far beyond what Galactic Council intelligence files indicated should exist. Her expression was professional, almost pleasant, as she addressed the Admiral directly. "Admiral Thekmor of the 7th Fleet. This is Fleet Admiral Sarah Martinez of the Human Colonial Defense Force. You have entered sovereign human space without authorization. Please state your intentions." Thekmor's translation matrix struggled with the concept of Fleet Admiral as applied to humans, given that official intelligence indicated they possessed no significant military fleet. Human, you will surrender your facilities immediately or face destruction. The Korthak Dominion does not negotiate with primitives. Admiral Martinez smiled, and Thekmor found himself reminded unpleasantly of the predatory expressions his own species wore before feeding. "Admiral, I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. You appear to be operating under outdated intelligence regarding human military capabilities. Allow me to provide a more current assessment." The space around the Korthak fleet suddenly became very crowded. Ships materialized from stealth fields that should not have existed, rising from the shadows of asteroids and emerging from the corona of the system star itself. The human fleet that surrounded Admiral Thekmor's formation was unlike anything in the galactic databases. The vessels moved with organic fluidity, their hulls seeming to shift and adapt as they maneuvered. They bore no resemblance to the crude chemical rockets and fusion-powered freighters that Korthak intelligence had catalogued. These were predator ships, built by a species that had learned warfare from surviving on a world where everything was trying to kill them.
"Impossible,"
Thekmor whispered. "Our intelligence indicates humans lack faster-than-light capability. How do you possess ships of this sophistication?" "Your intelligence," Admiral Martinez replied, "has been carefully curated to show you exactly what we wanted you to see. The question you should be asking is not how we built these ships, but how long we've been watching you build yours." The tactical display on Thekmor's bridge began showing detailed schematics of Korthak ship designs, complete with weaknesses and vulnerabilities that were classified at the highest levels of Dominion security. The humans knew everything: shield frequencies, weapon capabilities, structural stress points, and even the tactical doctrines used by specific commanders. "You've been studying us," he said, the statement carrying the weight of dawning comprehension. "For 73 years, Martinez confirmed. Every ship design, every tactical manual, every strategic doctrine your people have developed. We know you better than you know yourselves, Admiral. Which brings us to the current situation." She gestured, and the human fleet began to move with a coordination that suggested shared consciousness rather than mere communication. The ships flowed around the Korthak formation like water around stones, taking positions that would allow devastating crossfire while minimizing their own exposure to return attack. "You have two choices," Martinez continued. "You can attempt to fight your way out of this system, in which case you will discover exactly how much we've learned from studying your people's approach to warfare. Or you can accept our offer of safe passage back to Dominion space, where you can report to your high command that the strategic situation has changed." Admiral Thekmor looked at his tactical display, running combat simulations that returned increasingly pessimistic projections. The human fleet had them outnumbered 3-1, with vessels that demonstrated technological capabilities far beyond anything in the Galactic Council's databases. "What are your terms?" he asked, his pride warring with his survival instincts. "No terms. This is not a negotiation. This is an educational opportunity." Martinez's expression remained pleasant, but her eyes held the cold calculation of a predator that had cornered its prey. "We are going to demonstrate human defensive capabilities. You are going to observe and report. Your ships will not be harmed unless they attempt aggressive action." She paused, her smile becoming something that made Thekmor's instincts scream warnings. "Consider this a practical examination of your intelligence assumptions." What followed was unlike any military demonstration in recorded galactic history. The human fleet began to show off capabilities that redefined what the Korthak admiral had thought possible. Ships that could bend space around themselves, weapons that ignored traditional shielding, and defensive systems that seemed to violate several fundamental laws of physics. But it was not the technology that impressed Admiral Thekmore most. It was the coordination. The human fleet moved like a single organism, each ship responding to threats and opportunities with split-second precision. It was not just superior technology, it was a completely different approach to warfare. "How?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Practice," Martinez replied. 73 years of practice against simulated fleets based on detailed intelligence about your military capabilities. We have fought this battle thousands of times in our training systems, Admiral. Every possible variation, every tactical approach your people might employ. You are fighting a war we have already won in simulation." The demonstration continued for 3 hours, during which the human fleet systematically dissected every aspect of Korthak military doctrine. They showed how human weapons could penetrate Dominion shields, how their ships could outmaneuver traditional formations, and how their sensor systems could track targets that should have been invisible. "This is a massacre," Thekmore's tactical officer reported. "If they were firing live weapons, we would have lost the entire fleet in the first 15 minutes. Admiral Martinez seemed to hear the comment through some form of signal interception. "That assessment is accurate but incomplete. You would not have lasted 15 minutes. Because we would not have allowed you to realize you were under attack until it was too late." She demonstrated by having several human ships vanish from Korthak sensors while remaining visible to Thekmore's own eyes. The stealth technology was so advanced that the ships became effectively invisible to everything except direct visual contact. "Cloaking fields are impossible," Thekmore protested. "The energy requirements alone would make such systems detectable." "You are correct about traditional cloaking systems," Martinez agreed. "But we do not use traditional technology. Human engineering approaches problems from directions that your people have never considered. We learned to hide from predators long before we learned to hunt them." Admiral Martinez transmitted a data package that made Admiral Thekmore's blood run cold. It contained detailed intelligence assessments of every major Korthak military installation, complete fleet compositions, and even the personal profiles of senior commanders throughout Dominion space. "We know where your ships are stationed," she explained. "We know their patrol routes, their supply schedules, and their communication protocols. We have assets in position to neutralize your entire fleet structure within hours of receiving authorization to do so." Tipco weighed. The implications were staggering. If the humans possessed this level of intelligence about the Dominion, they likely had similar information about every major galactic power. The strategic balance that had maintained stability for centuries had been secretly undermined by a species everyone had dismissed as primitive. "What do you want?" Thekmore asked, his voice hollow with the recognition of complete strategic defeat. "What we have always wanted," Martinez replied. "To be left alone to develop our civilization in peace. But since that was not offered, we have prepared alternative solutions." She activated a new display that showed the true extent of human military deployment throughout the galaxy. Hidden fleets, concealed installations, and networks of intelligence assets that had been operating under the noses of galactic civilization for decades. "Phase 2 of our strategic response is now active," she announced. Every major galactic power is being presented with similar demonstrations of human defensive capabilities. Those who choose to recognize our sovereignty and negotiate fair treaties will find us reasonable partners. Those who choose to continue treating us as prey will discover what happens when the prey becomes the predator. Admiral Thekmore stared at the tactical displays showing human military assets positioned throughout known space. The scope of preparation was staggering, representing a level of strategic planning and resource allocation that dwarfed anything in Korthak military history. "How many of you are there?" he whispered. Martinez's smile returned, carrying implications that made the reptilian admiral's scales prickle with instinctive fear. "Enough, Admiral. More than enough." The human fleet began to withdraw, fading back into the shadows of space as smoothly as they had appeared. Within minutes, the Tau Ceti system appeared to have returned to its previous state of minimal human presence, but Admiral Thekmore knew that appearance was now meaningless. Admiral Martinez, he called out as the transmission prepared to close. The Council will not accept this. They will unite against humanity with everything they possess. Her final words carried the certainty of someone who had already calculated every possible response. Let them try, Admiral. We have been preparing for that scenario as well, as the Seventh Fleet limped back toward Dominion space carrying news that would fundamentally reshape galactic politics. Admiral Thekmore found himself contemplating a universe where humanity was no longer the prey. The quiet girl who had sat in council meetings taking notes had not just been gathering intelligence, she had been preparing for war, and that war was about to begin in earnest. 6 months after the revelation at the Galactic Council, the balance of power in known space had shifted in ways that political theorists were still struggling to comprehend. The emergency session aboard Nexus Prime brought together representatives of 47 species, but this time the atmosphere was fundamentally different. Maya Chen no longer sat in the back corner taking notes. Instead, she occupied the central diplomatic platform previously reserved for Supreme Chancellor Mordock, her presence commanding attention from beings who had once dismissed her as irrelevant. The plain gray jumpsuit had been replaced by the deep blue uniform of the Human Colonial Federation, with rank insignia that indicated authority equivalent to a fleet commander. Around her, the assembled representatives showed the strain of 6 months spent discovering exactly how thoroughly they had misjudged humanity. The Zephyrian Empire had lost 40% of its fleet strength to human defensive operations. The Korthak Dominion had been forced to withdraw from 12 systems after discovering human assets hidden among their own installations. 3 minor powers had already signed formal treaties recognizing human sovereignty rather than face continued economic warfare from opponents they could not detect. Supreme Chancellor Mordock activated his translation matrix with what observers noted was considerably more respect than he had shown human representatives in the past. The Council recognizes Fleet Commander Chen of the Human Colonial Federation. We have convened to address the current state of hostilities and explore possibilities for peaceful resolution. Maya smiled, the expression carrying none of the predatory implications it had held during their last meeting. Thank you, Chancellor. I appreciate the change in tone since our previous discussions. She activated a holographic display that showed the current tactical situation throughout the sector. Human defensive networks were clearly marked along with the locations of galactic military forces and the boundaries of territory now claimed by the Colonial Federation. 6 months ago, this council authorized Operation Final Harvest with the stated goal of eliminating organized human resistance. I am pleased to report that this objective has been achieved. The chamber fell silent as representatives struggled to interpret her statement. General Cronus of the Korthak Dominion leaned forward, his massive frame tense with suspicion. Explain. We are now asserting there is a significant difference. Maya's display shifted, showing the true extent of human territorial claims throughout the galaxy. Effective immediately, the Human Colonial Federation claims sovereign authority over all systems with significant human populations, along with buffer zones necessary for our defensive requirements. Ambassador Lysandra of the Ethereal Collective flickered with agitated energy patterns. Preposterous! You cannot simply declare sovereignty over sectors of space that have been administered by established galactic powers for centuries. Actually, we can, Maya replied with the calm certainty of someone who had spent considerable time researching galactic law. The legal precedent was established by your own expansion policies over the past millennium. Territory belongs to whoever can effectively control and defend it. She gestured, and the display zoomed in on specific systems where human control had been established through a combination of technological superiority and strategic positioning. We can control these territories, we can defend them, and we have demonstrated our willingness to do both. Admiral Kestara of the Void Fleet pulsed with colors indicating deep concern. The scope of territorial claims you are presenting would destabilize the entire galactic balance. Economic systems, trade routes, resource allocation, all would be disrupted. Systems that were designed without human input or consideration. Maya observed. We were never consulted about galactic economic arrangements because you consistently ruled that we lacked the sophistication to participate. Now we are creating our own arrangements. She activated another display showing trade networks and resource flows that had been developing in parallel with the official galactic economy. Human colonies and installations had been trading among themselves and with select alien partners for decades, creating an alternate economic system that operated completely outside council oversight. Ladies, gentlemen, and entities, allow me to present the reality of our current situation. Humanity has grown beyond your ability to control or contain. We have established territorial sovereignty over regions of space that contain resources you need, along trade routes you depend on, and in strategic positions that your military planners consider essential. The implications send waves of concern through the assembly. Commander Vexstar, participating remotely from his recovery facility, spoke with a voice still weak from his injuries. What are your demands? What terms would humanity accept for coexistence? Maya's expression softened slightly, suggesting that negotiation might be possible despite the overwhelming advantage humanity now held. Our requirements are simple and non-negotiable. First, formal recognition of Human Colonial Federation sovereignty over our claimed territories. Second, full membership in the Galactic Council with voting rights proportional to our territorial holdings and population. Third, reparations for 73 years of economic exploitation and the resources expended defending against unprovoked attacks. The chamber erupted in various forms of outraged communication. The idea of humanity demanding reparations from civilizations that had dominated the galaxy for millennia was beyond most representatives' ability to process. Supreme Chancellor Mordak called for order with resonances that made the crystalline walls ring. The Council cannot simply overturn centuries of established precedent because one species has demonstrated unexpected military capabilities. You misunderstand the situation, Chancellor, Maya replied, her voice cutting through the noise with quiet authority. This is not a negotiation about overturning precedent. This is an announcement that the precedent has already been overturned. Her display shifted again, showing real-time intelligence data from across the galaxy. Human assets were positioned within striking distance of every major galactic capital, military installation, and economic hub. The scope of infiltration was so complete that it represented de facto control over galactic civilization's critical infrastructure. For 73 years, humanity has been building the largest and most sophisticated intelligence network in galactic history. We know the location of every ship, the composition of every fleet, the vulnerability of every installation. More importantly, we have assets in position to act on that intelligence. The silence that followed carried the weight of dawning comprehension. The assembled representatives were beginning to understand that they were not negotiating from a position of strength. They were pleading for mercy from predators who no longer needed to hide their capabilities. General Cronus rose to his full height, his scales bristling with aggressive display behaviors. This is madness! You cannot threaten the entire galactic community with your primitive weapons and expect civilized species to surrender their sovereignty. Maya's response was delivered with the patience of someone explaining basic concepts to slow students. General, our weapons are not primitive. Your intelligence about our weapons was primitive. There is a significant difference. She activated a demonstration that made every military expert in the chamber recalculate their assumptions about human technology. The display showed weapons tests that bent space, manipulated time, and violated several laws of physics that the galaxy's greatest scientists considered immutable. Human engineering approaches problems from directions that your civilizations have never considered because you evolved under different conditions. We learned to survive on a world where almost everything was trying to kill us. That experience taught us some very creative approaches to killing back. But it was her next revelation that truly demonstrated the scope of humanity's preparation. The display showed not just weapons, but the industrial capacity to produce them. Hidden throughout human territory were manufacturing facilities that could construct fleets, build installations, and produce technologies that matched or exceeded anything in the galactic databases. The mining colonies you dismissed as primitive, they were manufacturing facilities. The trade ships you cataloged as civilian, they were intelligence-gathering platforms. The exploration missions you ignored as irrelevant, they were territorial surveys identifying resources and strategic positions. Admiral Feckmore of the Korthak 7th Fleet, participating despite his recent humiliation, asked the question that was on every military mind present. How long could you sustain a full-scale war against the combined forces of the galactic community? Maya's smile returned, and this time it carried implications that made experienced military commanders feel distinctly uncomfortable. Admiral, that question assumes we would fight a traditional war. We would not. Her display showed something that made the blood of every representative run cold: detailed plans for asymmetric warfare against galactic civilization. Not battles between fleets, but targeted strikes against infrastructure, supply chains, and critical systems that would bring entire civilizations to their knees without firing a shot in space. Traditional warfare assumes opponents of comparable capability engaging in direct confrontation, but we are not comparable to you. We are better at this than you are, and we would fight a war designed to exploit your weaknesses rather than match your strengths. The demonstration continued with scenarios showing how human forces would disrupt galactic commerce, eliminate key personnel, and systematically dismantle the complex systems that held interstellar civilization together. It was warfare as conducted by apex predators against prey animals, efficient, ruthless, and utterly one-sided. However, Maya continued, and the chamber held its collective breath, we prefer to avoid unnecessary destruction. Humanity's goals are territorial security, economic independence, and the freedom to develop our civilization without interference. These goals can be achieved through cooperation as easily as through conquest. She deactivated the tactical displays and replaced them with something that surprised everyone: development proposals, trade agreements, and technological exchanges that would benefit both human and alien civilizations. We are offering partnership, not domination. Joint research projects that combine human innovation with alien resources. Trade relationships that provide mutual benefit without exploitation. Cultural exchanges that respect the sovereignty and unique characteristics of all participants. Supreme Chancellor Mordak processed this through his translation matrix several times before speaking. You are offering to share your advanced technology in exchange for territorial recognition and political equality. We are offering to build a galactic civilization worthy of the name, Maya replied. One based on mutual respect rather than dominance hierarchies. One where species are judged by their contributions rather than their military strength. One where a quiet girl taking notes in the back of a briefing room is not dismissed simply because she represents a species that appears primitive. The chamber fell silent as the assembled representatives contemplated the choice they were being offered. They could continue trying to maintain their traditional dominance over a species that had already demonstrated its ability to destroy them, or they could accept humanity as equals and partners in building something better than what had existed before. Ambassador Lysandra was the first to speak. The Ethereal Collective would be willing to discuss formal recognition of human territorial claims in exchange for access to your spatial manipulation technologies. The Void Fleet, Admiral Kestara added, has always valued practical approaches to problem solving. We see merit in your proposal for technological cooperation. One by one, the representatives began to speak in favor of negotiation rather than continuation of hostilities. The reality was unavoidable. Humanity had demonstrated capabilities that made traditional approaches to galactic politics obsolete. The only rational response was adaptation. General Cronus was the last to speak, his voice carrying the bitter recognition of strategic defeat. The Korthak Dominion acknowledges human territorial sovereignty and requests formal diplomatic relations. Excellent. I will convey your responses to the Colonial Federation Council. Formal treaty negotiations can begin within the month. As the session concluded and representatives began to file out of the chamber, many of them took one last look at the human who had fundamentally reshaped galactic civilization. Maya Chen, the quiet girl who had sat in their meetings for 3 years, had turned out to be exactly what humanity had always been, the most dangerous predator in known space. But unlike the galaxy's previous apex predators, she was offering partnership instead of domination. The choice of whether to accept that offer would determine the future of every civilization in known space. As Maya gathered her materials and prepared to leave the chamber, she reflected on how far humanity had come since those first hesitant attempts at galactic contact. They had been dismissed as primitive, exploited as resources, and marked for extinction as inconveniences, but they had survived, adapted, and ultimately triumphed by doing what humans had always done best, learning from their enemies and becoming better predators than anything trying to hunt them. The galaxy would never again make the mistake of underestimating the quiet ones in the corner. They had learned too late that sometimes the most dangerous hunter is the one that nobody sees coming. And Maya Chen, no longer silent, no longer ignored, and definitely no longer hiding her true nature, walked through the corridors of Nexus Prime as the acknowledged representative of humanity's newest chapter in galactic history. The age of human expansion was about to begin.